Hot and heavy coming straight from the LSU football department. Head coach Brian Kelly has finally fired defensive coordinator Matt House and most of the defensive staff. Safety coach Kerry Cooks, Robert Steeples, the cornerback coach, and the defensive line coach Jimmy Lindsey. After a season of disappointment after disappointment, there's promise of a more elite 2024 LSU football team. Going more in detail about this decision that broke out of Baton Rouge today, here's the news and sports director of the Louisiana Radio Network, Jeff Palermo, and the editor of Tiger Rag, Todd Horn.
The East Baton Rouge Parish Library says this is the year to invest in the library. It brings value by connecting you to information, resources, materials, technology, and experiences, making a positive difference in your life. All you need is a library card. Stop by one of our 14 locations, open 7 days a week, or visit us online at ebrpl.com.
All right, Jeff Palermo along with Tiger Rag editor Todd Horn. Big news today in LSU land as Coach Brian Kelly has fired most of his defensive coaching staff, including Matt House, after 2 seasons. Your reaction to the move here by Brian Kelly, a decisive move and a quick move 2 days following the final game of the 2023 season?
I'm not surprised at all. In fact, you know, as you know, in previous conversations that you and I have had, I told you that basically after the game, after the bowl game, Kelly laid it out and said, now it's the time for me to make changes. I'm paraphrasing. That wasn't his words, but he basically said, now I can focus on 2024 and we'll move forward. He had to make the change. In my opinion, it was very clear that the biggest problem with the LSU defense, the biggest problem, and there were a multitude, was basically coaching.
When you say that, we're looking at what? Players out of position, poor tackling?
Yeah, absolutely. Primarily, that's the biggest problem. I've said over and over again, it's the defenses, it's the coach's responsibility to understand what your resources are, what your players are, what their strengths are, and what their weaknesses are, and to take advantage of those and to cover up the disadvantages. He didn't do that.
Matt House, the defensive coordinator, gone after 2 seasons, had a very good resume coming to LSU. Why do you think it just didn't work out with him?
You know, I don't know, Jeff. We heard rumblings before this season started that Kelly had to keep him on the staff, that he was anxious to jump, maybe go back to the NFL. Maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know, but it was clear all season long that defense was a hot mess, and a change had to be made, and kudos to Brian Kelly for making a swift change.
Where does he go from here? He now has to name a new defensive coordinator, a new offensive coordinator, and then also fill out the rest of his defensive coaches, defensive line coach, secondaries coach, a lot to do here now.
Brian Kelly's well networked and well connected, and I guarantee you he didn't make any of these moves without having a plan. So I'm sure he's working on it. I've heard rumblings of a defensive line coach that everyone here is familiar with coming in. Of course, that would be Bo Davis. That is not a report. We don't have any information on that, but I think that's a name you can look for as a defensive line coach. As far as a defensive coordinator, I'm sure he's got it in mind already, and he's talking to him if it's not already lined up. I think the offensive coordinator, by the way, is in-house already.
And this is something, as you talked about, Todd, this became, as we watched the season unfold, it became pretty clear, especially after 4 or 5 games, something needed to happen on the defensive side when it comes to the coaches. So he's had plenty of time to think about this and mull this over and go and consider who he would want as potential replacements to the individuals he just fired today.
Absolutely, and I'm sure he's been evaluating it all season. He even alluded to as much earlier in the off season. And, you know, I've been evaluating him every week, and he was just waiting for the right time. The right time was after recruiting signing day was done and after the bowl was over.
It's your time to make a greater impact. U.S. Army Reserve.
Just recapping the breaking news out of LSU this morning, Brian Kelly fired defensive coordinator Matt House and 3 other key members of this defensive staff. Here's his statement. I'll be reading it verbatim. This morning, I met with Matt House, Kerry Cooks, Robert Steeples, and Jimmy Lindsey to inform them that they would not return to our coaching staff in 2024. I want to thank each of these coaches for their work on behalf of our football program and our institution during their time here. Decisions like these are always difficult and we do not make them lightly, but they are made with the best interest of our program and our student athletes in mind. Moving forward, we will continue working to build a championship caliber coaching staff in support of our mission to graduate champions. This is a developing story. Stay tuned at tigerrag.com for all the details as they develop. This is Cameron Connor, your host, and we'll be back tomorrow with another episode.